remember me now?
Monkey Man is directed by Dev Patel. It's also co-written and co-produced by Dev Patel. And I would sit here and say that he must have had a lot of passion for this film since his hands were in so many pots. But you actually get to see that passion from Dev Patel play out on screen because he's also the main character for this movie. And again, that's just pretty cool. It's not the first time that a director has also starred in their own movie, but just getting to see the passion from Dev Patel, whether it's the workouts he must have put his body through in order to get in shape for this movie, or just the camera work from the other side of the lens as the director filming different scenes of this movie. Like, Dev Patel worked massive amount of overtime producing this thing, directing this thing, starring in this thing, writing this thing. And so I just want to give him as much props as I can before getting into the actual review, because I just think that's super cool. But with that said, let's get into the synopsis for Monkey Man. The synopsis for Monkey Man is pretty simple. You have a man who wants to get revenge for the murder of his mother. When he was a young boy, he watched his mother die. He watched the gangsters that killed his mother get away with it and then go run the city that they're currently in. And so he's had enough. And when this story opens, it's when he's going to take his revenge. Now, I won't give you a full play-by-play of this movie, but I do want to give you a little bit more in the synopsis. Like I said, the movie opens with him trying to extract his revenge, but things go horribly wrong, and then he has to get away. And since he's already attempted to kill these gangsters, and they're very powerful people, they now have him wanted for murder, so he's on the run from both the police and the gangsters. That's as much as I'm going to give you. If that sounds like a fun action movie for you, well, you should go check this movie out in theaters. It is playing now, and I'll say right off the bat that if you're a huge action fan, you will really enjoy this movie. But with that said, let's get into my positives and some of my negatives for Monkey Man. My first positive for this movie, I already sort of mentioned it, is the action scenes are done so incredibly well. Had a great time with the hand-to-hand combat in this movie. Now, I will say that this movie isn't gun-fu galore like some of the John Wick movies. Not to say the guns aren't used and they aren't fun to watch in this movie, but that's really not the focus of them, or that's really the focus of the John Wick movies. There's even a moment in this movie where someone references the John Wick films, and I thought that was pretty cool because he goes to buy a gun to try and get his revenge on the bad guys, and the arms dealer selling the gun to him says, "Hey, have you seen the new John Wick movie? I got his gun." And I just thought it was cool for them to reference that, because I feel like I'm always referencing John Wick when I'm talking about action films, but when the action film actually brings up John Wick as a movie within their universe, just felt close to home in the theater. But with that said, the action scenes, the hand-to-hand combat, all of that is done so well. It's very well choreographed, but seeing the brutal conditions that this character of Kid has to go through throughout this movie, whether it's being a professional wrestler at a staged wrestling contest that he goes through every night to make a little bit of money, or go on his revenge tour and eventually be hunted by the bad guys, and he has to put up with all of that. It's just really well done. I liked every moment of action in this movie. My next positive for this movie is going to be the music / soundtrack that they use for this movie. There's a lot of current pop culture mixed with Indian culture, music mashed together, and it seems like the music ramps up right before a fight scene or even during most of the fight scenes, and the music just helps propel you through those moments. Now, it's not throughout the entire movie. There are some moments of this movie that slow down. We'll get to those in a minute, but when the music is used right in this movie, I thought it was a great blend of pop culture, Indian music, and it just worked for me. My final positive for this movie is going to be the Indian culture, or I guess you could say Indian representation in this movie, but honestly, it was so much fun. Because I don't know much about the Indian culture, I'll be completely honest, as a white American man, most of my Indian culture comes from film or TV. Last year, we got a movie called It Lives Inside, and I loved that movie. It was a movie about an Indian family that had immigrated over from India to America, and they had to deal with this Indian demonic presence that was haunting them, and I had a great time with that movie. But again, I don't know how close to Indian culture that is, just like I don't know how close to Indian culture Monkey Man is, although in the hands of Dev Patel, I would think that it's pretty close to the Indian culture And I loved every second of that. I loved how you had the family element in this movie because it was a revenge story for his mother, and you saw that bond between him and his mom through flashbacks throughout this movie, and I thought that was really special and it was done really well. So again, I don't know much about Indian culture, and if you're watching this video and you do, maybe you could tell me where it was wrong, or maybe you could tell me where it's not really like that, or maybe you could say, hey, this was spot on and it was pretty awesome. I liked it too, because those elements worked for me personally, but again, I'm coming from a place of not knowing exactly what to look for. My first negative for this movie is going to be that this really was a run-of-the-mill revenge story, and there wasn't too much substance to it otherwise. And what I mean by that is I did just praise it for having some Indian culture elements in it, and I like the stuff between him and his mom, but ultimately this movie is about a boy who watched his mom die, grew up to be a man, and wants revenge. And there's really nothing more to it than that, at least not from what I got from the movie. So as far as this movie goes, this movie is a run-of-the-mill action film, and you get a revenge story, but there's nothing really fresh or new or exciting about the movie otherwise, at least in my opinion. My other negative for this movie, and I'm not being overly negative on this film, I feel like I've praised it way more than I've given it negatives, but my other negative for this movie is the pacing, because this movie opens pretty fast, and you automatically go into his plot for revenge that really keeps the movie going. Like I was saying earlier with the soundtrack, the music is ramped up, the action is ramped up, but then when things go south, after that first act of the film, the whole second act of the movie is very slow. You see a lot of flashbacks to try and understand him, and understand you have to do some character building, so I didn't have a problem with those. But you also have him trying to get his mind in shape to go after the criminals once again, and it takes so much of the movie that it really felt like it dragged the movie down. I would say that if they had condensed that down to less time and spent more time on those action scenes on either end of the movie, this movie might have been paced a little better, but I still had an overall fun time with the movie. It's just something that really kind of dragged me down while I was watching this. I started checking my watch about halfway through, like, we really got to get to another action scene here. Really got to get to the next thing in this movie. They're spending a little too much time here. Overall, I'll say that Monkey Man is more style than it is substance. And what I mean by that is that it's stylized in the action, the music, the look of this movie, the Indian culture, the representation, all of the style is brought to the forefront, but the substance for me was really lacking because, again, there was just not enough plot, and then it really dragged itself down. So for me, the substance was lacking while it had a lot of style, and I will say that if you're a huge action movie fan, go check this movie out in theaters, because the action scenes in this movie will not disappoint you. However, if you're not big on action, if you're more into drama, you may want to wait for this movie at home. I still think it's worth the watch. I'm glad I saw it in 2024. I would highly recommend that you guys check it out. But for me, it's a movie that maybe I'll watch again in the future, but it's not going to be at my top of my rewatch list. I hope all that makes sense, but those are just my opinions because that's my review for Monkey Man. Guys, have you had a chance to check out Monkey Man yet? If you have, let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know where we agree or disagree. Maybe you saw something in it that I didn't. Maybe you got a lot more out of it, or maybe you hated it. Just let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. And finally, guys, if you like this video and you want to watch more, don't forget to hit the like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Alright guys, we got to the end of my Monkey Man review. I had a great time watching that movie, had a better time doing the review just now. Something about being down here in my movie theater room, making reviews for you guys, and then we get to talk about it in the comments. It's just a fun time. But with that said, if you want to check out any of the other content on my channel, well, I've got all of my 2023 movie reviews right there, and I've got all of my 2024 movie reviews right there.